Okay, we're going to start with the limitation sections for the differences. The Caravan I should say CE208 Bravo, Caravan Bravo EX. Airspeed limitations, you're going to notice, are pretty similar. The main difference we have is in the flaps. Okay, so our VMO is still 175, VA 112 to 148. That hasn't changed. Flaps, flap extended speed. No longer do we have 10 degrees of flaps. We only have 15 and 30. So, and 15 is called takeoff and approach, and 30 is called landing flaps. Okay, so that's 150 and 125. However, Mokulele is going to use 125 and 100. So at the takeoff and approach flaps, we're going to use 125, and at the landing flap setting, we're going to use 100. Okay, so 125 and 100 for Mokulele limits. Maximum open limit speed still 175, no difference there. Okay, we're the same. We have the red band 20 to 50 for the low speed warning. 50 to 125 is the white. Arctic 63 to 175, no difference there, and up to 175. Okay, so we're still the same. Okay, for the engine, we have a different engine. It's still a Pratt & Whitney, but it's a PT6A 140. PT6A 140, not the PT6A 114A, it's PT6A 140. And we are not using a Macaulay prop on this aircraft, we're using the Hartzell. Now the old Hartzels for the Caravan, for the Grand Caravan Bravo model, used to be composites. This Hartzell is not composite, it's metal, it's aluminum. The only difference I found in flying it is that you don't get the idle speed drag until you're under about 115 on the speed. So if you go to idle power, you're not going to feel that drag really bite until you hit about 115. So don't expect the airplane to slow down super fast like you're used to. But you see the prop still 106, 104, basically the same size of prop. It does have a much wider cord. It doesn't list that here, but it is a broader blade. Okay, governing limit's the same. Starter cycle limit's the same. 30 seconds on, 60 seconds off. 30 on, 60 off. 30 on, 30 minutes off. Okay, and the same thing for the GPU. Same thing. Okay, back to power plant limitations. Engine operating limits. We have a number of exceptions that we need to look up here, but basically the prop stays the same at 1900. You also have a max reverse at 1825, a transient at 2090, and the maximum rating, of course, at 1900 still. The oil pressures, you can check these out: 85 to 105, 40 minimum on the oil pressure. 85 to 105 again, 200 max during start, and oil temperature, we're looking at 32 to 99, 32 to 99 on the oil temperature. Idle can be down to negative 40 up to 99 Celsius. It's pretty crazy. And yeah, there we go. Say the sheer horsepower that we're going to get out of this, we're flat rated at 867 shaft horsepower. Sorry, not sheer. Shaft horsepower, and that is at 2397 torque foot-pounds. 867 shaft horsepower at 2397. Okay, so when we come over to the torque side, what do we have? We have takeoff torque, max climb torque, max cruise torque. They all have these numbers here, basically meaning that do not exceed these temperatures. If you do, it's limited. You have limits, and we'll look at those limits here in just a moment. But basically, you're looking at 2397 for all intents and purposes for us. Maximum reverse, 1 minute max, 2,500 pounds of torque. Transient, up to 2,600 pounds of torque for up to 20 seconds max. Okay, so if you accidentally go above the 2397, you can roll it up to 26 for as much as 20 seconds. If you go above that, I believe you're only limited to 2 seconds, just like the old airplane at above 2,400 pounds of torque. So 2397 is our new red line for all of our operations here at Mokolea. Now we have these maximum IT, and at the altitudes that we operate shouldn't be a problem. Maximum ITT. These numbers are quite a bit different. Takeoff 850 as opposed to 805 for 5 minutes. Okay, maximum climb used to be 765, now it's 825. Maximum cruise 80. It used to be 740, now it's 805. Idle used to be 685, now it's 700 with a note. Okay, we check that note. Number 9 here on the next page. Increase NG to keep idle IGT within limit. Okay, NG to keep. You can do that with what? The condition lever. That's right. Maximum reverse limited to 1 minute, 850 degrees Celsius. Transient 905. This used to be what? 850. Now it's 905. Okay, starting is the same, 1090 for 2 seconds. It's the same as the Bravo. And maximum rated 825. Okay, what's it say about 850 and 825? 850 is notation 1, 7, and 8. And number 1 says per section 5, performance figure 5-8, maximum engine torque for takeoff. Anytime ITT exceeds 825, this power is limited to 5 minutes. Okay, number 7. For section 5.5 performance figure 5.8 maximum engine torque for climb. Okay, so there's a figure there to figure that out. It's probably not gonna be a problem for us. Oh, and also the maximum torque, the red line for the torque, will actually is a moving red line. The G1000 figures out what that maximum torque is off of section 5 performance figure 5-8. It actually figures that out for you as long as you have both air data computers going at the same time. If you lose one of them, you'll have a fixed 2497 on the red line. You'll have to go to your charts to figure out what your max climb is. But we're going to make that easy and say, hey, for cruise, we're going to do no more than 710, just like we've been doing. And we're going to use the same power settings. Same power settings that for the older airplanes for the cruise, which is 1,300 pounds of torque above 7,000, 14 below 7,000. And 8, yeah, same thing, as a max cruise torque chart as well. Okay, so they don't list the numbers, but for all intents and purposes, we're using 2397 for takeoff and initial climb, and then we're going to give you a company max torque limit here real soon. But cruise power settings are going to be the same. One thing I note that when you set the power for climb, say you set 22 or 2,300 pounds of torque for the initial takeoff and climb, if you don't touch the power setting, the power will drop as you climb. Okay, and you're going to be getting up into more efficient air sooner, and you're going to be getting to altitude a whole lot sooner as well. That's good for many reasons. So engine operating limits, ITT limits. Let's look at power plant instrument markings. We're going to see a few different lines. Okay, so on the torque indicator, it's going to go to 0 to 2396 on the red, and again, that moves on the G1000 if you have both air data computers going. Okay, some slightly different red lines and green arcs on all of these gauges. Check these out, and I included this POH, the EXPOH. If you look in the documents section on the Litmos online training, you'll find that POH in there. You can download it. It's also in Dropbox under Pilot folder, under Training folder. Oh, one interesting thing. Let me see. One interesting thing here is that the outside air temperature for this aircraft, it doesn't say it here, but the outside air temperature is limited to 107 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not very high, 107 degrees Fahrenheit. Whereas the other one, the Bravo model, I believe was 127. So you can pretty much operate that just about anywhere, anytime. But this is going to be a little bit limited in the summertime in places like Arizona and the Grand Canyon and you know, Nevada, Las Vegas area. Okay, the first EX we got doesn't have the oxygen, but if it does, you'll have these ranges on here. Generator current apps, negative. These will be your markings. So you'll get a yellow band, lower caution range at -10, amber, black text. Yellow band, upper caution range for the generator amps. You got greater than 200, amber with black text. Again, the red line here. We don't have anything for that. The red line for the electrical bus voltage, if it's off 24, less than 24, or less than or equal 24.5 is a red box with white text. Okay, if it drops below that mark. And then on the bus volts, you're going to get, if you're greater than or equal to 32.1, you're going to get a red box with white text. You're getting too much voltage, something's wrong with your voltage regulator. Standby alternator current, alt amps. Again, the -10. You're going to get a warning. Now these are your CAS on the side of the GPS, on the side of the Garmin 1000 next to your on your PFD. These are the CAS messages. Okay, greater than 75 on your battery current. If you're less than or equal to -5, you're going to get a CAS as well, amber with black text. We're talking about ice rock, going to go there. Weight limits. Weights are different. Okay, memorize your new weights. We have a maximum ramp weight of 8,842 pounds. That's 35 pounds heavier than, of course, than the maximum takeoff weight, 8,807 pounds. 8,807 pounds. So, got to make sure on your Excel sheet when we get this right, it reflects that. Maximum landing weight still 8,500 pounds. 8,500 pounds. Okay, so that's going to be our limiting factor in many cases. Maneuvering limits hasn't changed. Flight load factor limits has not changed. Notice that when you have flaps in the landing position, you have plus 2.4 Gs instead of the positive 3.8, negative 1.52. I guess the negative 152 probably doesn't change with the flaps, but the positive Gs definitely do change. So we don't do our steep turns with flaps. And if there is turbulence, just like in the other aircraft, you don't use flaps for the emergency descent. You don't use it in this airplane anyways. You go up to 175 knots, no flaps. Okay, same kinds of operation limits. Kinds of operation limit lists. I'm going to go here, equipment lists. Stick with the MEL on this. Let me come down a little further. Fuel limitations, a slight difference, Okay, both tanks and reservoir, 339.1 gallons. Both tanks, we have 335.6. Okay, usable, each tank, of course, 167.8. Total usable, this is really what we're interested in here. Both tanks on and reservoir, 335.3. both tanks on, 332. One tank on, 165. So 332 is really the number with both tanks on that you're looking for, and how much fuel the aircraft holds in the two fuel tanks. It's got an extra usable 3.3 down in that reservoir beyond the tanks. Huh? Total unusable, there you go, 3.6 and 2.8. Maximum fuel imbalance stays the same, 200. Due to possible fuel starvation, maximum full rudder side slip duration is limited to maximum 3 minutes. I believe that's the same. Shouldn't need that with our barn doors and that draggy prop out front. Fuel limits. Not a lot of difference here. Nothing we have to worry about here in Hawaii. Still using the same type of fuel. Okay, maximum operating altitudes, non-icing conditions. This airplane is certified up to 25,000 feet. With ice, 20,000. Outside air temperature limits. We got, what do we got? Cold day, -54. Don't have to worry about that. Hot day, ground operations, +42. That's at 107. It's not very hot. I mean, that's not very hot. It's going to hurt some people. Flight operations, +37 to sea level to 25,000 feet. Ground operations. So it's actually 37 to go fly. +37 to go fly. +42 just for ground ops. I wonder if they're going to change that. I'm not sure what that deck skin is. Okay. Flap limitations. Approved takeoff range up to takeoff and approach. So either flaps all the way up or to the center section. Not all the way to land. You're not allowed to take off with landing flaps. Approved landing range up all the way down to land. So basically 0 to 30. Takeoff is 0 to 15. Approved landing range and icing conditions up to 0 to 15, or up to takeoff and land. We don't have to worry about that. Takeoff and approach, I should say. I don't see any differences here. No difference here. Generator limitations on the ground. What do we have? Air conditioning. We'll consider this. We're gonna have air conditioning on and bleed air heat off. So that's what we need to be looking at. Amps on the ground. Max generator load. Ground operations. 55%, 35. 60%, 90. 65%, 155. Okay, so you can be pulling these loads. So if you're looking at your gen amps. You're looking at your amps and it's showing you like 90 amps. You better be up at over 60%. Of course, we can adjust that by the condition lever. Okay, good to know there. And if you're putting it up to high idle for taxi or 60%, you shouldn't have a problem with this. However, I'll tell you right now, I do see, even in the Bravo models, I do see 100 up to 100 amp draw just after engine start, especially a long engine start if you're trying to get it cool on the start. So 100 amp draw right after engine start is not unusual. That's why it's good to bring that NG right on up to high idle. Okay, in flight, max generator load, flight operations. Okay, we're typically air conditioning on, so we're going to have, if you're drawing 125, it should be at least 65, 170, 72, 200, more than 80, because that's where it picks up 80, full 200 amps. Air conditioning off is the same. Okay, G1000 limitations, interesting. We're not going to have to verify oceanic and terminal navigation is prohibited unless the pilot verifies the currency of the. Okay, so we have to verify that database. Then we have to check that system status page for the current software version. RNAV GPS instrument approaches must be accomplished in accordance with approved instrument approach procedures that are retrieved from the G1000. Okay, so this is the same as the other one. It's the regular G1000 Bravo. You guys want to verify that the torque, now this is a little bit different for the EX, since we have a dynamic torque gauge. Okay, you should be able to verify that with figure 5.8 in section 5 for the maximum torques for takeoff, climb, and cruise. Not that we'll be using those for anything above 1,000 feet, really. Okay, the dynamic red line is a graphical representation of takeoff power below 16,000 feet. The maximum continuous power above 16,000 feet. Okay, so the red line changes basically for you to show you your maximum torque. Again, as long as the two air data computers are operating. Yeah, it's just the same as the Bravo. This is the same as the Bravo as well. Max autopilot engage speed 175. Minimum engage speed 80. The autopilot must be disengaged below 200 feet AGL during approach operations and below 800 feet AGL during all other operations. So 800 feet is going to be 1,600 feet because it's double that for Part 135. And then we can come right down to 200 feet if it's an ILS approach. Interesting, raw data ILS approaches below 400 feet AGL are prohibited. They're the same. The same here. Same here for the Bravo. Okay, now we're getting into the placards, required placards. You need to go through the POH and read these placards. It's good to be familiar with these. I'm going to go and zoom in a little bit for these. Okay, so this is the difference here. We got on the flat mount, and we showed that in the previous video. You have up, takeoff, approach, and land. So this goes from 0 down to from 0 down to 15 and 15 to 30. This is all the same. And all the same. Door handles. Same. Max baggage 325. Refer to weight and balance data for baggage cargo. This is right. This is in the very back. In the very back over here, next to the back door. So the back seat 325. Max baggage. Okay, of course, we have a bench seat back there, but imagine still maximum weight you could use 325. I believe it says 320 for cargo. Cargo loading. And cargo. Okay, pods. Okay, so pod A 230, pod B 310, pod C 270, and pod D is 280. It's the same. Exterior placard, same here. Same. Same. We got 2 flux valves. That's the same as the Bravo with the G1000 Bravo. Engine oil the same. 14 quarts, 9.5 drainable. Nice thing about this is you don't take the dipstick out. You look at the sight gauge instead. Look at the sight gauge. Don't use a dipstick to tell the oil level. We showed that on the other video. Okay, external power is still the same. 28 volts, 800 amps. Do not exceed 1700 amps. Okay, towing limit same. Leather gust lock same. Okay, emergency procedures. We've got a couple of minor differences here. Just going to cover these real quick. Engine failure after takeoff. Engine failure after takeoff. Wing flaps handle in the up position. 100 knots. Not 95. 100 knots. Wing flaps in the land position. 80 knots. Not 85. 80 knots. Maneuvering speed very similar. Slightly different weights. But for the most part, it's the same, 112 to 148. Max glide, 95. This is considered flaps up. This is now you have to consider there's engine failure immediately after takeoff is 100. They're telling you 95 for best glide. Okay, so I'm giving you 5 dots of fudge factor there. But it ranges 71 to 95. We'll make sure that's on the spreadsheet, on the manifest spreadsheet. Precautionary landing with engine power 80 knots. Landing without engine power 100 or 80. Flaps up or flaps land. Okay, same stuff here. Okay, engine failure during takeoff roll. These are the emergency memory items. Okay, so takeoff roll, engine failure during takeoff roll. Excuse me. Power lever, beta range apply. Okay, brakes apply. That's the same. Engine failure immediately after takeoff. Airspeed 90 knots. Airspeed, 90 knots. That's what you have to remember. Okay, prop RPM lever feather as required for the flaps. It's a little different there. Oop, sorry. Engine failure during flight, airspeed 95, power lever idle, prop cut off. Okay, feather and cut off. Now, one thing to know is that if you do shut the engine down, you look at number 7 here. It says fuel/oil shutoff knob. It's not just a fuel shutoff knob anymore. So when you pull that red handle, the one below the throttle quadrant, below the flap handles, there's that first red knob and the bottom red knob. The top one, that used to be your fuel cutoff only, but now it cuts off fuel and it also cuts off oil to the oil cooler, so it stops oil flow as well. We'll see the same flame out above 50%, below 50%. Air starts, engine shutdowns. Let me back up just a little smaller. Let's do this a little faster. Okay, same stuff. Airspeeds again, 100 knots, wing flaps up, and 80 knots wing flaps to land. Okay, forced landings, precautionary landing with engine power, again 80 knots, or 90 knots with flap handle takeoff approach, 80 knots with approach land, flaps land. And 80 knots for ditching with flaps landing. Otherwise same. Same. Smoke and fire, same. Smoke and fire, same. Except you're not just pulling the fuel, you're pulling the fuel and oil knob. Same stuff. More smoke and fire is the same. Okay, emergency descent. Power lever, seatbelt shoulder harness secure. Power lever to idle. RPM, propeller RPM max full forward. Wing flaps up. Airspeed 175. Okay, in the Bravo model, it was flaps 10, 175. This airplane is flaps up 175. Rough air also full forward and up, but you observe maneuvering speed. So the same up, but observe maneuvering speed, depending on your weight. Okay, so no flaps 10 in this aircraft for emergency descent. Okay, same for ice, same. Same stuff, same NGs. Low idle, high idle, 52, 65. Same. Same for electrical supply failures. Same for trim, fail. Yeah, max glide is going to be maybe just slightly different. I'm still seeing a height in feet. So 2,000. If you're looking with cargo pod, you get 2,000 feet. Looks like 4 miles. 2,000 feet will get you 4 miles of glide. So 2 miles per 1,000 feet still. 14 should give us 14. Let's take the front edge of this. 14 should give us, think about 28. 14 should give us 28. Still the same. All the same. And that just about covers the differences. So for the limitations and the emergencies. So a few minor speed changes. Flaps 0 instead of 10 for smooth air emergency descent. And of course different numbers on the limitations, different ITT numbers that you have to memorize, and different torque numbers to memorize. So have at it, and download that POH out of Dropbox, the EX POH out of Dropbox, give it a read, understand your aircraft. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Thank you.